Out the corners of her eyes, she saw uniform-clad legs reach the corner of the counter. "Might I be of assistance?" Captain Roberts asked.
"Nothing to help," Roger muttered in dismissal. "It's all just between my missus and me."
When Faith realized Roger's words had served to turn the captain's attention back on her, she wished she could fade into the background. Instead, however, she felt frozen, caught in the army man's fixed stare. Then she noticed what had caught his gaze: the large, angry bruise above her wrist, visible since she'd pushed her sleeves a bit up her arms as she worked, was not something one could miss. Her gaze flew to his face. She saw pity painted there. Shame seared her. A blush burned all the way up her neck and cheeks. She shoved her sleeves down, tugged them as far as they would go. In as firm a voice as she could summon, she said, Sorry, Roger. It won't happen again. I'll finish up here."
"No! You won't be finishing up nothing." He glared at her. "I'll handle this, seeing as you can't do a single blamed thing right. Go on. Get on out of here, woman."
Faith sucked in a ragged breath on her way to the back storage room, the weight of 3 stairs heavy on her already burdened shoulders. It was setting up to be a long, difficult night. "Oh, Father, don't abandon me now," she prayed.
"He will be good for it next week,"
Nathan Bartlett, owner of the logging camp up the mountain, said from just inside the front door. Faith paused to listen. "I'll be making my payroll as I always do. You can extend him credit, Nolan. You know I keep a tight rein on my men, and I don't cotton with workers who can't, or won't, keep their word. He said he'd pay next week, and I expect him to do so." From the relative shelter of the back doorway, Faith looked from Mr. Bartlett to her beefy husband and back. Few ever stood up to Roger. He was a large man, more burly and heavy-set than tall, but powerful, and cursed with a legendary temper. It took little to arouse it to full steam. To cross him was to jolt it awake. The lumberman didn't look in the least intimidated. She wished she had that strength, that assurance. Then again, Mr. Bartlett was tall, very tall indeed. One of the tallest men she'd ever seen, she reckoned. And he had the broad shoulders and powerful, muscular build to go along with his height. She, on the other hand, while tall for a woman, was built on a small frame. Her husband narrowed his mud-brown eyes. For a moment, she feared he would argue with Mr. Bartlett, who had always been kind and polite to her whenever he'd come into the general store. But a quick look at the lumberman, silent, expectant, immovable, allowed her to ease her taut posture. It didn't look as though Mr. Bartlett would put up with any of Roger's tomfoolery, any more than he did Welcher's. Faith worried her bottom lip between her teeth. Without the logging camp's business, the Nolans' livelihood would be threatened. The bulk of their business came from Mr. Bartlett and the men at the camp. Under Mr. Bartlett's unyielding gaze, Roger flinched. He patted his thinning gray-brown hair, tightened his lips, and jutted out his jowl-wreathed chin. "Fine. But if he don't pay me next week, I'll come after you for the cash, Bartlett." "Understood." Instead of answering the belligerent question, Mr. Bartlett turned to his new employee. "What do you say, Purcell? Do you give Mr. Nolan your word? Will you pay him next week?" The new logger nodded. "Yes, sir, Mr. Bartlett. I told the lady I'd be paying next week, and I will. I'm no shirker, sir." His boss turned back to Roger. "Satisfied, Nolan? He's given you his word." Roger hesitated once more, his fists clenched behind the counter where the men couldn't see them. Faith's stomach clamped tighter. "I also," Mr. Bartlett said, stepping closer to Roger, his features more rigid and